So we're asking you today, Police Minister Bheki Cele and Justice Minister Ronald Lamola attended the bail application of two farmers accused of assaulting their security officer employee. This was at the Groblersdal Magistrates Court. So what do you make of the cabinet ministers, especially the Minister of Justice, attending a criminal court case? Do you think this affects the perception of impartiality of the courts? And does this also maybe place undue pressure on the administrators as well as the people that are tasked with essentially dispensing justice? We ask you to interact with us. We're on X as @theagenda_SABC. You can also call us on 011-714-0661 or 0662. The second hour of the program starts now. So we delve into the controversial presence of the Minister of Police and Justice at Wednesday's Groblersdal court proceedings. Now, two analysts, one legal and one political, share insights on whether it's acceptable for the minister to attend such sensitive criminal court cases. Now, questions also arise about potential intimidation, considering the minister's position as the ultimate boss of the magistrate. Now, with elections looming, the public is left wondering about the motives behind this attendance and the political message it may convey. Stay tuned as we unravel, of course, the intricacies surrounding this high-profile courtroom event. But before we get into our discussion, here's a clip of the Minister of Justice addressing the media outside the Groblersdal Magistrates Court.
We want to affirm the rights of everyone to protest, to express whatever opinion they may want to express in the courts. But such protests must be done peacefully. They must be done in line with the laws of the Republic. We condemn any form of violence, of blockage, of any forceful entry in our courts. We also condemn any display of apartheid flags that invoke emotions in our country, that reminds us of the apartheid past by any grouping. All of us belong to one democratic South Africa, and we must abide by its constitution. We want to thank all the members of the South African police, the community here, who restored order when there was such kind of behavior. We will want the Human Rights Commission to look into this kind of behavior that evoke the emotions of the past. This country belongs to all of us. Any inflammatory racist behavior and statement can never be tolerated, particularly 30 years in our democracy.
Okay, so let's get this conversation underway. We begin with our SABC News specialist, researcher Maswele Ralebona, who joins us now. We are also joined by Professor Kholofelo Rakubu, as well as, of course, political analyst Mr. Sandile Swana. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the agenda. Now, Mr. Ralebona, let's perhaps start with you and give us a bit of background and context to this case.
Good morning to your viewers. You will remember, Kolisi, that in the past, it's not the first time that you see Bheki Cele attending court cases while he's an executive in government. There was a time where he was attending the Ketomina case, and he was on the side of the police officers that were being accused of certain allegations in that court. And of course, people were talking even during that time to say, during that time he was the commissioner of police, to say he should be neutral in this case because it involves the members of the public, and in this case the police were supposed to be perceived as members of the public because they are accused of criminal activities. But in terms of the case that we are looking at in Groblersdal now, I want us to contextualize what happened in the past in cases like this. You will remember what happened in Senegal when two men, if I'm not mistaken, were accused of killing a white farm manager in Senegal. And during their first court appearance, some quotas of the white farmers invaded that court and even turned police vans upside down. During their second court appearance, during the first court appearance, the events of the first court appearance didn't sit well with many of the of political parties, including the EFF, which asked its members to also go and defend justice or defend the court of law. You will remember that during that day, the EFF was there, but police had to deploy a number of officers and equipments to make sure that the two factions, which is the white farmers and the EFF members, do not come in contact with each other. It was a tense day, but it was supposed to be a day in court. So the focus was no longer on the court, but the focus was on the warring factions outside the court premises.
Yeah, and I want us to delve into what the law says, particularly when it comes to the attendance of government officials, specifically those in the justice system at court proceedings. Is there some sort of guidelines to that?
I wouldn't be sure about the guidelines when it comes to that, but I know that the ministers, as the executives in government, they can go there and decide to be stand with the public. My understanding is that as Minister of Justice and the Minister of Police, when they are in court, when they are in court, they are the minister to the warring factions. They don't take sides. They can't be the minister of ANC and EFF and ACDP that were seen in Groblersdal, but they are the ministers to everyone, black and white, in that court. So for that, the only problem that may arise is that this is an election year and people might start talking about electioneering and all that. But on my side, I feel that to avoid the events, because we know that this second court appearance was preceded by the events of I think it was on Monday, where the previous week, when the white farmers in Groblersdal organized themselves and went there holding apartheid flags, and they were saying all sorts of things. So to avoid events that happened in Senegal in the past, I feel that ministers had to go there and kind of neutralize the system or the events in order to allow both factions, black and white in this matter, to kind of allow the justice to take its course.
And Prof. Rakubu, in terms of legal ethics as well as principles, is it really appropriate for the Minister of Police and Justice to attend court proceedings, particularly in such sensitive matters?
I don't think they were supposed to be there, because that nullifies the capabilities of the relevant structures within police that can handle violence or crowd. Are we saying they are so incapable to an extent that the minister with so much responsibility, two ministers for that matter, had to abandon their daily activities to go there? No, that is politicking, if we were to. And that also showed division, because their presence there, looking into the timing in the politics, it was one-sided. There are many cases that they needed to attend to. I'm sure in their offices, documents that request signatures are piling. Was it necessary that they go there? Don't we have provincial commissioners? Don't we have communication spokesperson? So why were they there? Does their presence impact on the justice processes, proceedings in court, and so forth? No, they were there to just push a political agenda, and that does not even solve current racial issues that South Africa is facing. And we are also setting a precedent. Should a certain color decide to demonstrate some way, does that mean they are going to stop everything and attend a particular court? Are we telling the white farmers that we are incapable, we are afraid, two ministers? Because I'm sure today they feel very, very important that we got the attention. You understand? We have resources in place to block them. We have resources in place to communicate that. You are not supposed to do just the way they communicate with black community. If blacks were decided to decide to go to high court to demonstrate, I'm sure there will be barricades and the ministers will not be there. There will be what we call public order policing members will be around the courts, right? Was that difficult for Groblersdal? What is difficult? Because as we analyze, they wasted time, they wasted resources. They could have been somewhere to attend to critical cases. So next time this similar case affects black community, are they going to come? Because they set a very bad precedent.
So do you think this ultimately puts undue pressure on the staff that is supposed to be dispensing justice at the courts?
It does, and there's so much unnecessary attention. Are you saying they are incapable of administering what they know to administer all the time? And if we zoom into this context, their presence in either a victim's funeral or visiting victims' community or families or attending court, it does not correlate with the level of crime or criminal justice outcome. They would attend, but nothing will come out. I'm sure they visited Senzo Meyiwa's family. Nothing happened. They might even be, in this case, undue pressure. Certain people will have to be pressurized to speed up and jump certain cases to consider this one, which is unfair on other victims that their stories were not publicized. And the media drives their responsibility, minister's responsibility. Had not this case received this much attention, they were not going to attend. But because you publicize it so much and society expects activities and reaction, and I'm sure the white farmers as well expected reaction to divert responsibilities, to rearrange their structures, they are there and they won.
And Mr. Swana, the prof says, what were they doing there? What do you think?
Thank you, Mxolisi. What they were doing there was to invite in favor of themselves personally for their careers, which is Bheki Cele and Lamola, to invite black votes in their favor, and also to invite black votes in favor of the ANC. That is what they were actually doing there. The question then could also arise, what were they supposed to do, actually, rather than what they were doing? In my judgment, the South African Police Act, especially Section 67, provides quite clearly that nobody should organize people, in other words, enter a conspiracy to go and interfere with the work of the police. There is a law, Section 67, that you must not interfere with the police, an investigation or anything like that. So in that place of Groblersdal, a police officer was actually manhandled by a white person there who was organized, who was part of a bigger group, who apparently has got another case under investigation. This is a hooligan. And thrown to the ground by a member of the public who is protesting the arrest and prosecution of these two people who had beaten up this employee of theirs. So the key to this thing is that at the local level, every local level, not only in Groblersdal, all South Africans, the police, the local police, including the commanders, and this is, I'm talking out of practical experience, including local commanders, need to enforce Section 67 and teach the communities about Section 57. You cannot go and overturn with your own hands or whatever other device you use a police van. You cannot beat up a police officer or make a statement. You don't need to beat up a police officer. You can't even utter a statement that aims to prohibit or to prevent or constrain a police officer from exercising their job. So in terms of the principle of subsidiarity as well, the problem that occurs, or has the potential of occurs, even a service that needs to be delivered, must be delivered at the lowest level. That young man who threw down a police officer There are people, elders, and all sorts of high caliber officials, state officials, in the local environment of Groblersdal who are supposed to have prevented that from happening, who are supposed to have addressed it when it happened, without going even beyond the province, at the most going to district level. So the principle of subsidiarity needs to be employed, so that we don't say that you are a state president because you are better than every mayor, or you are a state president or minister of police or whatever it is because you are better than the people at the local level. The design of our state, which is the three spheres of government, has got no principle that says the people who are at a different sphere are automatically better in any way than the ones who are at another sphere. Okay. It's just they have different jobs.
All right, let's check in with the phone lines. I understand that we have Molefe joining us now from the Free State. Very good morning to you, Molefe. Thank you so much for calling us today. What's your take on the subject?
Good morning, members. Now, my take is very simple and short, is that I feel taken aback by what ministers have done. My view is they were not supposed to be there on the first place. I mean, there are so many things that they can do. I hold a very strong view. They were not supposed to be there. Because if the ministers are showing interest of whatever, I mean, it's something that creates a lot of things in our society. Remember, we are still struggling and battling to put this South African together. But now, for them to be there, I mean, it's drawn a line. Maybe some will think that minister is favoring blacks or whatever, but my taking is that I'm still adamant and I'll stand by it. They were not supposed to be there. Maybe they could have done something, they could have arranged in other ways, not for them physically to be there.
All right, Molefe, thank you so much for giving us a call there. And Mr. Swan, of course, just echoing some of the sentiments that we've also seen on our social media platforms. Then I'd ask right now, how might the minister's presence be perceived by the public in terms of their role in the legal system and as well as their political responsibilities?
Their role within our architecture of the state, clearly they've got no business going to attend really a case where people abused their own employee. This chap was drunk at work apparently, and in the process of discussing that in the room or wherever they were where they were discussing it, it is unclear how they exchanged that. Now, let's be clear about this. For instance, you look at the case of Colini that was referred to, similar to this one where a so-called white farmer attacked a 15, 16-year-old youngster, and eventually that youngster died. Now, the tragedy of this is that because the thing became politicized, I believe, that's the reason why some of the forensic experts found that the investigation was not conducted correctly. The two suspects, the two accused, were found guilty. 3, the 2 accused were actually discharged at the Supreme Court of Appeal in a case that was then, the same case, the appeal was financed directly by AfriForum. So if the case was thrown out at appeal, it shows clearly that the work at the police station right up to the court was not done properly. It was there was a lot of surrounding political pressures and mistakes were actually made. The fact that a person died during an altercation or a physical confrontation does not always mean that there was a murder committed. So all of those things can easily be overlooked when there's a lot of political interference within the processes that are provided for in law.
And Prof, to bring you back into the fold now, the attendance of the ministers, how does it affect the impartiality of the system itself?
Let's revisit. Do they understand separation of powers? It looks like the two ministers forgot their responsibilities and the nature of their offices, what is expected of a minister, and put their own political agenda for. Because now the unnecessary attention and pressure, we've always been fighting about court's inability to process and reach conclusion or convict, right? Now, with all this attention, a certain case will have to go to number 50, and this one will go to number 1, first position, right? So that to put a political agenda, and a particular victim will be left helpless, you understand? Because of the decision by ministers or their activities. If we were an honest nation, they should be held accountable. They should account, because as South Africa, we cannot afford separation, division, confusion amongst the nation, black or white. But what they've done actually leaves us in a state, whether black or white, you understand? Because we are building here, but them pushing a political agenda leaves us in a state. So they must revisit and understand their responsibilities, because now courts, we've got prosecutors there that are now left wondering, wanting, where do I touch? What do I do? Then they'll push minister's agenda, and which is not supposed to be. And you know they are human beings. Magistrates are human beings. Interpreters are human beings. An interpreter might be clouded by the presence of those two officials that are not supposed to be there. You understand? So, and certain processes will be done unnecessary. There will be certain evidence will have to suit political agenda. You understand? So we might get to a wrong conclusion. We might not to even understand the nature of that crime, and certain. Because at the end of the day, we must also tap into what caused that. Yeah. But we are not even looking at that. We are looking at what transpired, the result.
And Mr. Swane, if the ministers were packaging and conveying a certain political message, what would that message be? Because this is a very critical year we're in right now. It's an election year.
No, the political message is clear, and Lamola articulated it very well, regardless of the fact that he should not have been there at all. The message was that you black people, we as the ANC government, including myself and Bheki Cele, me being Lamola and Bheki Cele, we are taking care of the victimized black people, which now the black people constitute 92% of the voters, by the way, or in fact could even be more if you take only the voters. They constitute 92% of the population. Maybe if you look at the voter statistics specifically, they could even be higher. So, so he wants to sell that, and you'll remember that in Senegal, in the Free State, a similar thing had happened, but this time it was a white man who was killed by black people. A so-called white farmer, white farm manager. So the EFF actually did a very big drama there. But the main thing that they communicated to the ministers was that you, as the ANC government, do not protect the state institutions, and you do not protect the black people, and you are allowing racist white South Africans to gain more and more confidence to launch reckless attacks against black people in South Africa. So that is the political message, that they are wanting to quickly close the gap for the people such as the EFF moving into that space to say, there you go again. You don't know what you are doing. You are exposing our people to racist attack. This was not probably initially a racist attack. This was a workplace conflict. The managers and the owners of that business could have been black. There are people, including black people, who beat up black employees in South Africa. Black people beat up black people in South Africa. I have been beaten up myself by black people and had a case in court. So black people do beat up black people. So when you are beaten, it's not always because you are black.
All right, that surely does blur the lines, but thank you so much for unpacking this conversation. I wish we had more time, and that was, of course, political analyst Sandile Swana, joined by criminologist Professor Kholofelo Rakubu, as well as our SABC News specialist researcher Maswele Ralebona. Thank you so much for unpacking. And of course, at the back of that, we also did ask you what you think about this particular matter on our social media platforms. Here's the question of the day, where we said Police Minister Bheki Cele and Justice Minister Ronald Lamola attended And the bail application of 2 farmers accused of assaulting their security officer employee at the Groblersdal Magistrate Court. This is the conversation that we just had now on the program. Let's hear what you had to say on our social media platforms. Right, Thoughts Rhymes on Twitter says they are citizens too. Kudzo says absolutely nothing wrong with that. And of course, that's all you had to say on the X space this morning. We'll be back straight after this. You're watching The Agenda.